So everybody probably already heard Dylan Raiola commits to Georgia. So is that really a big deal? It's really not. I mean, it was announced his commitment to Georgia on Monday, but we've all kind of seen the writing on the wall for the last at least month or so. I mean, it is a big blow to the Huskers, but it's also a relief as now Nebraska can move on and concentrate on the more important players and correcting this offensive line that's been maybe average at best. If we plan to get back to anything like this team used to be, then the lines on both sides of the ball have to be a priority. I mean, I know Nathaniel Frazier, the talented running back out of California, and it's Brandon Baker's teammate. When he came to Lincoln back in March, he realized after he arrived in Lincoln that he found out that the Nebraska Cornhuskers used to be the original running back university for having dominating running backs every year. But the real reason why Nebraska back then, why the Huskers dominated at the running back position back then, was that they were actually considered one of the best, if not the best, offensive line universities in the country. As the Huskers year in and year out always produced NFL caliber offensive linemen. Having that dominating O-line every year made an average running back look like a Heisman candidate. Think about it. Think of a team now that produces running backs that you would consider maybe the running back U or a team with the running backs. I'm thinking Wisconsin, okay? But what else is Wisconsin known for? They're known for putting out offensive linemen. You can't have one without having the other. You know what I'm saying? If you have this dominating offensive line every year, you produce offensive linemen, then you're going to probably have top running backs because that you need the offensive line. The one thing you need, to me, and this is why I've always believed, you need two things. You need to be able to be physical, have that offensive line that can be physical and pound and run the ball, especially in the fourth quarter. Wear them down to the point where now when you run the ball, that offensive line is taken over. You need to be able to do that, and then you need to be able to stop the run, which means you need the defensive line to do that. To me, them are the two things you need on top of the skill players. Yes, you still need skill players. Yes, losing Dylan Raiola is a big blow, but it was trending this way. The high point for Nebraska with Dylan Raiola came a couple months ago when Dylan and his family attended that Husker basketball game during the recruiting dead period. The sellout crowd greeted Dylan with a standing ovation, and he just ate it up. He loved it. And then later on, he returned for another visit during that big recruiting weekend on March 25th. But that's where the excitement ended. As it's seen from there, things seemed to quiet down with Raiola and the Huskers. As like something didn't catch his eye or impress Dylan like it did the other recruits when he was here. I mean, you think about it. If you think about it, that makes sense because other recruits come in here and they're shocked. The facilities shock them, the city shocks them, the fans shock them, and it's a positive shock that grabs other recruits' attention and brings them back. It doesn't mean they all commit, but it's enough to bring them back. That's why Brandon's coming back. That's why Brandon went home and told defensive lineman Breland about him, and he came here and he was enough to put the Huskers on his radar. Same with Nathan Frazier. But with Dylan Raiola, you didn't get that. Dylan's been here for years. His family's, his uncle's here, his dad played here, so he's been to Nebraska a few times. So the crowd doesn't shock him, the city doesn't shock him, the facility doesn't shock him, it doesn't wow him. So it's still just Nebraska to him, where Georgia did. So truly little insight was even given about the Huskers. And if Dylan would have returned for a visit in June, talk was talking about he'd take a visit in June. Nebraska needs to take notes from Kirby Smart and start following his lead. You know, college football has always been a copycat sport, like a lot of sports. Going all the way back to the beginning of time, even the great Tom Osborne was smart enough to know if something wasn't working to reach out and copy other programs where it was going. The big turnaround in the 90s that brought Nebraska to finally to its dominance that decade was when Tom Osborne realized that he had to make a change on the defensive side of the ball. So he reached out to his good friend Bobby Bowden, who was the head coach of Florida State at that time. And Bobby allowed Coach Osborne to come down to Florida State and learn about his defensive schemes, the player types, and formations, to the point that Tom switched from the 5-2 to the 4-3, started putting speed at them positions, and all this almost backfired on Bobby Bowden, as in that 1994 Orange Bowl, the Huskers, with their newly defensive strategy that he got from Bobby Bowden basically the year before, almost bit him, because they were seconds away from upsetting the Seminoles in that classic Orange Bowl battle. And Nebraska was like 17, 18-point underdogs in that game. And even Bobby Bowden said that Nebraska should have won that game, that they were even out, Nebraska outplayed them. So the Huskers need to take notes from Kirby Smart, especially when it comes to recruiting, especially when it comes to recruiting quarterbacks. Kirby Smart has made Dylan Raiola a priority in Georgia's recruitment since Dylan was a freshman in high school. Smart was the first one to offer Dylan a scholarship back during his freshman year, and that's before Dylan was all you see now. And I think we could all agree Kirby Smart knows how to recruit a quarterback. So I think we need to be following him and be right behind him and be on top of things. So I think it's time to start following Kirby's recruiting style, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. Now, winning does help, so we need to do that soon. But also keep in mind, just because Dylan committed to Georgia doesn't mean he'll graduate from Georgia. With his ties to Nebraska, Nebraska is never going to be out of it. So if he ever hits the transfer portal, you never know. Huskers have a shot there. So I wouldn't look into this too much. To me, it's more important on the lines, the offensive line and the defensive line. To me, that's a priority. To me, it is. So what is Nebraska now? What's their next move for 2024? Do they have a 2024 quarterback they could go after? Well, when you talk about 2024 quarterback prospects, there are very few available at this point of the year. They threw all their eggs in one basket, the Raiola basket. That's what was the big downside of putting all their eggs in the Raiola basket, as now the Huskers are out of the race for basically all the top quarterbacks. Now, they could look at quarterback Cam McClellan, which doesn't have an official Nebraska offer yet, but does plan on taking an unofficial visit to Lincoln in June. He's probably the only quarterback the Huskers could make a move on right now for 2024. The other could be Dante Reno. He's a South Carolina commit that Coach Satterfield has connections to back when he was with South Carolina. So he's got great connections with Dante, and it might be a long shot, but Dante does have a relationship with Coach Satterfield and could be a possibility. To me, it might just be best if we just don't take a quarterback in 24 and concentrate on other positions, and let's worry about the quarterback position for 2025. It might not be ideal, but the best option, instead of taking a lackluster quarterback and wasting a scholarship, would be just to wait until 25. And remember, by the end of the season, the transfer portal opens back up, and it could hold some promising answers then. Plus, you'll have a better feel for the kid coming out of the portal, as you'll have film on him and tape on him. You'll have some insight on how he is in a college program, kind of like with Jeff Sims. A lot better than you'll have on a high school kid that no one even realizes or even knows if he'll be successful or not. Now, in other recruiting news, Nebraska will get to host a top 4-star cornerback in Cam Michael. as Coach Rhule and staff have been busy recruiting hard within the SEC country, especially down in Georgia, where this talented cornerback resides. They've also picked up a walk-on commit from Leslie Black, who's out of Statesboro, Georgia, where Cam Michael is from as well. Michael has stated that he's blessed to receive a Nebraska offer from Coach Cooper, which Michael called a good dude. There wasn't any discussion on the phone conversation with Coach Coop about visiting Nebraska, but despite not talking about it, Michael stated that he plans to visit the Huskers sometime this year, but wasn't sure if it would be during the summer or will he wait till the fall when the season starts and come during a game. I feel that getting him here during a home game would be more beneficial for the Huskers, but just getting him here at all would be a plus. Now, Rhule did add a couple of transfers to the team. He added a walk-on transfer from Omaha on Saturday. Former Omaha standout and Notre Dame commit Barrett Leibentrip and Wyoming's Caden Becker both have decided to transfer to the Huskers and kind of play that fullback hybrid position like Bonner's playing. So there's some positive notes to take out of this week. Now, despite the offer from Nebraska to athlete Teddy Rizak, he quickly jumped all over to the Notre Dame offer as this 2024 Omaha Westside linebacker committed to the Fighting Irish after him and his family were extremely impressed with Notre Dame. The offer from Nebraska kid didn't even faze him, as he actually showed no interest in the Huskers. But him and his family are big Catholics, and Notre Dame, basically is the top Catholic school in the country, so it makes sense that he committed there. Now, let's talk about defensive lineman Aiden Breland. Aiden Breland is another teammate of Brandon Baker and Nathaniel Frazier, Santa Ana, California, who visited Lincoln during the spring game with teammate Brandon Baker when he returned to Lincoln. And he has now narrowed down his top 10 schools, and yes, the Huskers made that top 10 list. And this is pretty impressive because Nebraska was not on his radar. It was after Brandon Baker came in here in March, was impressed with Nebraska and said he was coming back for the spring game, went back home, and as he was discussing with Aiden Breland, convinced Breland to come here during the spring game with him. And Breland was impressed with the school and the city and the facilities to the point he included Nebraska on his top 10 list. So there's hope there. So the Huskers are in that top 10, and Breland is an elite 2024 defensive lineman. He's 6'5", 295 pounds, and is one of the top 35 players in the country and the number 6 defensive lineman in the country. And this would be a big boost if the Huskers can land Breland and teammate offensive tackle Brandon Baker. We could all get excited about these two, as to me, these two players are more important and is the way we should be going, as we need to boost both the offensive and defensive lines, and this is the route we need to be going. So to me, that's more exciting. Coach Rhule and his staff also extended over 30 new offers last week, as Nebraska's been trying to grab a strong presence in the state of Texas, as well as Illinois and all over the SEC. Some of these offers included in 2024. They also made some 2025 offers, offered a few 2026 players. So Coach Rhule and his staff had been really busy. They extended over 30 new offers from 2024 to 2026 recruits. And in Big Ten news, the Big Ten has now agreed to accept and allow the Washington Huskies and the Oregon Ducks out of the Pac-12 to now enter into the Big Ten along with UCLA and USC, probably a couple more years before they actually come in, which is now makes the Big Ten not the Big Ten really anymore. It more like the Big 14 or Big 16. But this is a big leap for a Big Ten conference, and now makes them one of the big boys, and not the big conference in the country, including over the SEC. And you could see all this coming together. You're probably going to see the SEC grow too. So you're probably going to start seeing these conferences narrow down to maybe 2 or 3 massive conferences, setting up for the change in the playoff system when they go to 12 playoff teams. So let's keep an eye on that as the next couple years go. So now, if you would like to show your gratitude by leaving a small tip for us, please use the links in the description below, as we do accept Venmo and the Cash App. And I want to thank all of you that have left us a tip. Please accept our gratitude, as I really do appreciate all your kindness and thoughtfulness. Because as you know, we're in the service business, and just like a waitress or a waiter, we totally depend on tips to help us continue to create and edit and upload these videos. And if you'd like, you could also support us on our Patreon page by becoming a Patreon member for extra perks and rewards throughout the year. That link's in the description as well. So again, thank you for your support, and until the next video, go Big Red.